Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ashleigh McLaughlin, and I am the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the nonprofit Youth on Course. And if you're unfamiliar with Youth on Course, we are an organization that's dedicated to eliminating the cost barrier that keeps so many young people from being able to take benefits of our game. I'm joined here today by an incredible group of change agents, and we're going to have the opportunity to share with you all some of the wonderful work that they're doing in their communities. These are all individuals who have been selected specifically because they are spearheading innovations, not only throughout our golf industry, but they are truly making changes in their communities as well, through creating more inclusive and sustainable operating and community building models. Today, they're going to share some really big ideas with you that range in scope from multi-million-dollar investments within the community to community building that starts with one person at a time. So our goal is for you all to listen in and hopefully take back with you some not only larger visions of what it is that you can do at your municipal course starting tomorrow, but also over the next 5, 10, 20 years to really make a big difference to your community and the golfers and prospective golfers who can take benefit of the game. So I'm excited to get started and kick things off. We'll have a really rich conversation here today, and we'll also leave some time. A few of our panelists are going to stay on to answer questions for you live at the end. So hold some of those for the chat here later. But I'm excited to introduce you to our all-star lineup, starting with Adam Reny, who is the Executive Director, oh dear, for the First Tee of Lake Erie. Adam, I'll have you introduce yourself, share a little bit about the work that you do.
Sure. Thanks, Ashleigh. Excited to be here and joining everyone on this panel. And again, my name's Adam Reny. I'm the Executive Director for First Tee of Lake Erie. We cover Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. I'm sure many of you have heard of the First Tee organization, but we're a national organization. We're one of, I think they're up to 150 chapters now around the world now. So it's an international organization. We teach core values, life skills, healthy living, mentorship, and we provide employment opportunities in the game of golf in our organization, and we use golf as the vehicle to deliver our programs. So we just completed 2 months ago a very exciting project we had been working on for almost 6 years. It was a $7.5 million project in conjunction with the local Boys and Girls Clubs of Toledo chapter. We just opened our doors a month ago. And we had 40 acres of land adjacent to Inverness Club, right kind of in the central heart of Toledo, Ohio. And we developed a driving range, short game area, athletic field, and we built a 15,000 square foot building on site to house Boys and Girls Club programming and some First Tee programming. So it's been we're a month into the programming, and it's been a great start to kind of a new creative way to introduce the game to a lot of new kids.
Adam, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Next, I'm excited to introduce you all to Azucena Maldonado with the Latina Golfers Association.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I am all about municipal golf, so this is just a wonderful gathering of people who are all about municipal golf. We are the Latina Golfers Association, and we empower women and Latinas by teaching them how to leverage golf as a business tool. And our hope is that they will shatter that glass ceiling with a golf ball. So what we do, we're 13 years old, and what we do are golf clinics, golf lessons, golf outings. We do golf fashion shows. We do brunches, everything that's going to excite women about getting involved in golf. So we are in Los Angeles County primarily. We are regional. We're based also in Texas and other key cities where Latinas are. And we are in Los Angeles County alone, 2,500 members. So we take women that have never, ever held a golf club, and we hold them by the hand, and we introduce them to the golf world and encourage them to become bona fide golfers.
Love it. Thank you for joining us this morning or this afternoon, excuse me. Next up, David Gang, CEO and founder of Brightspot. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Ashleigh. Thanks for having me today. It's exciting to be here. I'm the CEO of a company that does large-scale digital infrastructure for a lot of the leading companies in the United States, global companies. And one of the things about our company of 200 people is that we're very mission focused. We've always been about giving back and making sure that we do things for society. And our anchor pillar has been around Special Olympics, youth, primarily through golf, and wounded veterans. And this program that we have in the sport of golf was created in 2013. It came out of years of involvement with Special Olympics and unified sports, which was putting people with intellectual disabilities on the field of play in any sport with typically developing people. And we took that to a whole different level in 2013, where we said, let's take people of difference coming from all different parts of the world and create a multi-day event for them to give an opportunity to meet people that are different than they are, to learn that they're more similar than not. So we took Special Olympic athletes with first tee kids, primarily from inner cities, with wounded vets that were missing legs or arms, and we put them into a multi-day golf event. And it's really become an incredibly special event over the years, completely funded by us, to bring people together, once a year for 4 days, and truly make friends that have lasted now almost a full decade in some cases, because to realize that golf is this unifying sport that allows you to spend a fair amount of time with somebody that's very different than you, and learn that you have the same passion and love for one thing, which is that one great shot that you get, that separated your day from the day before. And we're super proud of the event, and hopefully can shed some more light on that over the course of the time with you all today.
Thank you. Excited to speak more about that. Next, pleased to welcome Danny Shoy, President and CEO of the Eastlake Foundation. Danny, welcome.
Thank you, Ashleigh, and great to be with this esteemed group of panelists this afternoon. So I am, again, Danny Shoy, CEO of the Eastlake Foundation, and the Eastlake Foundation is located in the great city of Atlanta in Georgia in the Eastlake neighborhood. We are a 26-year-old nonprofit organization that was founded by philanthropist and businessman Tom Cousins to break the intergenerational cycle of poverty for families living in Eastlake. So Eastlake was once home to one of the most violent housing developments in the country, Eastlake Meadows, also known as Little Vietnam, because of the high rate of crime, the low level of employment, the poor academic outcomes for young people, and a pretty robust $35 million annual drug trade in this community. And so working with a number of leaders in the corporate sector, with government, with the residents, Tom founded the foundation in 1995 to transform this community. And we've done so through an integrated, holistic model of community redevelopment. And that model is, very quickly, mixed income housing to replace concentrated poverty in public housing, community wellness, which is everything from financial literacy, physical health and wellness, and recreation, and really anchored by what we call our cradle to college education pipeline, serving young people from 6 weeks old all the way through the completion of high school and into college. All of this work led by a community quarterback, which in Eastlake is the Eastlake Foundation. The work that we've done, the blueprint that we've developed, has been codified as a model by another organization called Purpose-Built Communities that has helped implement 26 other Eastlake-like projects across the country in 20 plus cities, including in New Orleans. So I'm glad to see my colleague, Gerry Barousse here. And then very quickly, the tie into golf with all the work that we've done is Eastlake is also the home to the historic Eastlake Golf Course, which is where legend Bobby Jones learned to play golf. It was his home course, first and last game of golf. Other amazing golfers like Alexa Sterling and Tom used the golf club through owning it as a catalyst to drive deep corporate engagement to revitalize this community. And last but not least, we are the home of the Tour Championship, which has been in Eastlake since 1998.
Wonderful. Really looking forward to the chance to do a deeper dive into learning more of that story, Danny. And finally, very pleased to welcome Gerry Barousse, founding member and chairman of the Bayou District Foundation. Gerry, welcome.
Thanks, Ashleigh, and it's great to be in the company of this great panel. And I actually look forward to learning from all of you, and I suspect there will be follow-ups because I think there'll be some more connects that we'll all make as a result of this convening. So thank you, and I appreciate being here this afternoon. I'm Gerry Barousse. I'm the chairman and was co-founder of the Bayou District Foundation New Orleans. Bayou District really came to be in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in 2005. We were actually invited by Charlie Yates, whose dad was a contemporary of Bobby Jones and played amateur golf with him. And Charlie's been a longtime friend. And he is in Atlanta, and he suggested in September, October, Hurricane Katrina was the end of August in 2005. And Charlie followed up very quickly and tried to check on us, but he also invited us to Eastlake because he said, as you're thinking about redeveloping the city of New Orleans and bringing back the city, we think this is a concept you ought to consider. And we went to Eastlake, spent a day and a half, as I say, drank the Kool-Aid, realized that if we could do something like this in New Orleans, it could be a real game changer towards doing very much the same work that Danny's done and the Eastlake Foundation, which is working to change the cycle of poverty in a neighborhood and see that ripple out across a broader community. Today, 15 years later, we have worked on a community that was a former public housing complex, just like Eastlake, 18 city blocks in which we now have 685 units of mixed income housing, 1/3 public housing, 1/3 low income, and 1/3 market rate. And we have cradle to college education like Danny does, early education, 6 weeks through high school. We also have a health clinic on site. And like Eastlake, we actually looked to partner and create a golf opportunity that would provide long-term sustainability to our model. And we were able to do that because the location that we chose is 3 blocks from New Orleans City Park, which is the second largest urban park in the country, 1,300 acres. And we worked with the park to create and build a new Reese Jones PGA Tour design golf course that opened in 2017. And the concept really, and as Danny tries to explain, why golf? It's really about the sustainability. The dollars that are raised through golf are able to benefit both City Park and the Bayou District Foundation, and we take those dollars and put them back into program work to support our community. So it's allowed for a lot of things to happen that would not have otherwise been sustainable. And we're glad it's 15 years later and we're here, and I appreciate being with you all today.
Wonderful. Thank you all again for those wonderful introductions. I'm excited to kick the conversation off. And I want to start with something, David, you mentioned about golf being a unifying sport, right? I think most of the folks on this panel and those who are listening in would agree that the golf course lends itself to being a place where people can connect, right? But as facility operators, there are more opportunities for us to create and build and establish relationships. And I think some of the work that you and Azucena do with your organizations really serve as a platform to do that. So I'd love to really kind of do a deep dive into how we can better connect people with our game and use our spaces to do that. Azucena, could you share with us a little bit about the moment that inspired Latina Golfers Association and how creating this space has allowed people to establish community that otherwise they may not have?
Something you said about community and how golfers are community and family is really one of the reasons I started Latina Golfers Association. I learned through playing golf that golfers in my culture, we have a term called comadres, like we're sisters, we're family, right? And I started seeing as a newbie golfer that golfers are really like family. When you meet a golfer, I don't care where you are in the world, at an airport, anywhere, you are going to connect with that golfer like a family. And so what I like to share with our Latina golfers is that golfers are like comadres. We're a family. So when I started Latina Golfers in 2008, I knew nothing about golf. I do not come from a golf background. I come from immigrant parents, humble beginnings, was raised in the project. So golf was never in my field of reference at all. It wasn't until I moved to California, in Southern California, where golf is everywhere, thank goodness. And I started as a recreational golfer. That's all I wanted to do. I fell in love with golf immediately. I just wanted to play golf, get a handicap, lower my handicap. But I knew nothing about the golf industry or what golf was really about. I just knew I wanted to go play golf as often as possible. And then somebody invited me to play in a charity golf tournament. That was so new to me. But I realized right there that I was being introduced to VIPs, entrepreneurs, corporate people, and having been relatively new to Los Angeles, I was connecting with all of these people, like over a round of golf, and they were inviting me to play in foursomes. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. But you know what I noticed is that at every one of these tournaments that I played in, there were so few women. I mean, there were like 100 guys in the field of golf in the field of the tournament, and maybe 3 or 4 women. And after a while, I just said, wait a minute. And I was such a newbie to golf and the golf industry. I didn't even know that women weren't playing golf. I mean, I probably knew that Latinos weren't in this space, but I didn't know that women weren't playing golf. And then they started saying to me, well, why don't you invite your girlfriends to come play? And I realized I didn't have any Latina friends or girlfriends that played golf. So I said, instead of complaining about it, I just need to do something about it. And in 2008, founded Latina Golfers, really to be that welcoming arm, because I don't come from the golf world or the golf industry. I'm an outsider, really. And I know what it takes to provide a welcoming atmosphere for those of us that know nothing about golf. And so that is really what the Latina Golfers is all about. We want to be that welcoming arm to our community, to share this amazing sport with them that can truly transform lives.
Love that. And sometimes all it takes is somebody who's willing to grab the bull by the horns and create that space to welcome everybody in. David, you did this sort of the same with your innovative event. Can you tell us a little bit about where the inspiration for that came from and how you're going beyond just the 4 days to continue those relationships that are established? Oh, looks like we need you to come off of mute there, David.
Yeah, that little mute button gets you every time. The inspiration actually for the event started with work that we were doing with the Tiger Woods Foundation and with Special Olympics. And we had an opportunity to put a couple first tee golfers from LA, one from Pasadena and one from East LA on the golf course with the professionals at the World Challenge event that was held out at Sherwood. So it was a great opportunity to take young people, 14-year-old and a 15-year-old, and let them play with a professional at a world-class golf course. And it just opened their eyes. And then also we're able to get a Special Olympic athlete who happened to be my son on the golf course with Tiger. And you could just see the beginnings of something that we could do more of. We reached out to the first tee and Special Olympics and just started to put people together from all different walks of life with an opportunity to play originally with professionals through an event that Tiger's Foundation hosted in DC with the AT&T event at Congressional. We then brought in wounded vets, happened to be playing with one in a tournament and talking to him and realizing that golf was a big way of bringing soldiers back from wounds in Iraq and Afghanistan and getting them an opportunity to do something they could do with one less leg than they went to Iraq with. And when I thought about all those different chance meetings I had through the space of golf, through the world of golf, it really inspired me to say, why don't we just make that happen on a regular basis and make it happen in a much bigger way? So we took that idea and we turned it into a multi-day event that involves, cookouts and golf-related games that are not about 18 holes of golf, and workshops on jobs, and visiting monuments in DC as an educational event. And all those things can be done in smaller increments and everything like that. But we really just turn it into a life event for people, a 4-day event that they would never forget, and friendships that they would always have. And that idea came from very small little, eye-opening twinkles in the eye, if you will, things that happened with me and a golfer from a different part of the country.
Incredible. I'm curious, David, if there's any advice or recommendations that you would give to an operator who may be interested in hosting a bite-sized version of that, right? Something for folks in their community, while they may not have the ability to do something that's multi-day. What kind of recommendations would you have for folks who want to connect with their community and put something on locally?
I think the key of the event is to bring people that are different together, and that difference might be the intellectual disabilities component to it, because they're amazing on the golf course. They revel in whatever their positive aspect of their round is. They know how to talk junk like everybody else on the golf course. Bring those young people in that think they're hot shots at the game, and then bring a wounded vet, because they just have a whole different perspective on life. Like, golf is important to them, and they're happy to do it in whatever the way they can. If you can bring those people together and not just have like the coffee in the morning, but doing a little bit of something special around the tournament that you put together. And it doesn't even need to be an 18-hole tournament. It's just about bringing those people together, letting them show the skills that they have, but let them engage in a conversation. It was interesting, like, we took walking away from the tournament because we wanted to put people in a cart so they actually talked to each other for a long period of time. Because the first year we did it, it was a walking event, and you could just see people get isolated and just kind of do their own thing like a lot of golfers do. But the idea was to create friendships of difference through the world of golf. And you can think about that as, putting, darts, anything that you need to, at your facility, that is really about just bringing those people a difference and giving them an opportunity to be more similar than different. And golf, of course, is great for that, but there are other things that you can do besides 18 holes of golf to do that. But it's create that conversation and create it in a way that it can last forever. And it does. It absolutely does.
Friendships of difference. I love that. And creating life events, right? What a great way, what a beautiful way to kind of reframe our mindset around these golf outings, right? These are life events that we're establishing for people. So really, really happy to hear that. Azucena, one question for you, right? Latina golfers isn't necessarily nationwide just yet. For organizations who are looking to reach out to other community groups, what are some recommendations that you might be able to share? You're obviously, someone who is well versed in golf and how to bring people together at a golf course. But for other organizations who may not necessarily have somebody in the community who's as knowledgeable as you are about the game, how do we reach out? How do we bring them in? How do we suggest recommendations for formatting of events?
Well, for municipal courses and any courses that want to reach out to diverse communities and Latinas in particular, I mean, it is so basic marketing 101. I think in the past, golf courses, have built it and expected everybody to come. In our case, it just doesn't work like that. If we've never stepped foot on a golf course, there's just no reason for me or anyone to go to a golf course. So you have to give them a reason to come. You actually have to welcome them. And so it does take a little bit of work. And it's grassroots outreach is really basically all it is. So for a course, instructors, I say to them, do some research. Who's in your community? Who are the chambers? Who are the women's organizations? Who are the communities that you can go and make a presentation, invite them to come to your golf course and use that facility as a meeting place, and then have a speaking role at their meeting to introduce them, give them tours of the golf course. You'd be surprised how many of us have never ever stepped foot on a golf course. So it's intimidating. If you've never been to one, you don't know what to do when you walk in the door. You don't want to feel out of place. Is it a private, public course? Many of us who've never been on courses have no idea how to distinguish one from the other. Am I going to feel welcome? How about just a tour of your golf course? There's so many real basic things that we can do to invite non-golfers to our golf courses. But step one, connect with your community, neighborhood groups, chamber groups, women's groups, Rotary groups, whatever it takes, but you have got to get out there.
Absolutely. And you and David both touched on the fact that these outings, they don't have to be golf specific, right? It could be darts. It could be, coming on site and listening to a guest speaker. So all really important ways to introduce somebody without necessarily having to put a golf club in their hand.
And I will add that our golf courses are wonderful spaces for communities to gather, have community meetings, invite your neighborhood associations to come meet there, do a toy drive, do a blood drive, do a golf, not golf, but just a fitness day there. Our centers, they're community centers, golf courses are, especially municipal courses. So let's just open it up to the community.
Absolutely. As I said, when we spoke, we chatted a little bit about what makes municipal courses in particular such a great fit for organizations like yours. Could you touch on that briefly, the reasons why?
Absolutely. Well, municipal courses are accessible, affordable. Many times they're nestled in our own communities. Our panelists have mentioned how golf courses are just blocks away from their centers. So they're just a natural for us to be able to connect. And because this is so important, especially here in Los Angeles County, our county golf system, make sure that we in the community know that golf courses, municipal golf courses, are a part of parks and recreation. Golf courses are parks. Let's just get that clear. Golf courses are parks made for communities and everyone to come and enjoy. So because they already have that mindset, it makes it such a natural connection for groups like Latina golfers. They're so accessible that they make it really easy for us to do programming and explore programming that might be the old-fashioned way of looking at golf. They're just really open for community to become involved with them. So I love municipal courses, as you can tell.
We could not tell it all, Azucena, not at all. One additional question, right? We have touched a little bit on accessibility, right? And the importance of inclusion and welcoming new groups of people to our facilities and helping them feel welcome. A big aspect to that is also representation, right? So not just extending the invitation, but ensuring that when new and diverse groups show up, that there's somebody who looks like them, who's behind the desk or helping to operate the facility. So I'm going to direct this question to you, Azucena and David, but I'd certainly welcome anybody to answer. How do we better address sort of diversity within our workforce at our facilities? How can we better find and retain talent?
I'm happy to start. I will say that, you can't just put an ad, on your website and say, we've got this job opportunity at our golf course. We have to be intentional about reaching out to diverse communities that may not have a history in golf. So it does take a little more work and effort to do that. So I would say that's number one. We cannot say, and I will not have the excuse if we can't find them. We are there. We are there doing everything. You know, we might not be the golf pro yet. There are some, though, I will say, but we do all kinds of things. And so I think it just takes effort for that golf course to reach out to the groups, the universities that have a high percentage of people of color, the chambers, you know, organizations that exist. There are many Latino and African American organizations, Prospanica, NAACP. There's just so many. They just have to do their homework to reach out to those communities to get the word out and do internships, apprenticeships, you know, because we need to set that pipeline for us to work our way into all aspects of the golf industry, but it's going to take some effort.
I think it's important to actually, I always say you have to be double blind when you go about hiring or bringing people into something. And what I mean by that is, if you start talking to people about filling an opportunity, you know, and whether it's in a professional business or a golf course, you know, for just, you're looking for help around the golf course. And if everybody looks like you, you're pretty blind to what's going on around the country. So you have to actually make sure that you're not looking at everybody who looks like you when you're doing interviewing. And then the other side of being blind is being blind to always trying to make a compromise in what you're hiring, and hire people that have high energy, that are right for the role, that want to learn, that want to do the right thing, and just focus on the energy that somebody can bring to your facility to drive or your company, you know, to drive a change in your company. So it's a combination of make sure you're not always looking at yourself when you're doing interviewing, and then also just making sure that when you're deciding who to hire, that you're looking for people that have curiosity and passion and a desire to make a difference, not always that they have the exact skill that you need, you know, regardless of what that job is. And I think if you do that, you immediately start moving more and more towards, you know, the center of what our country looks like, rather than the center of what your house looks like.
Such a great point. Love that. I'm going to shift just a little bit because we've had an opportunity to talk a lot about community, right? And how we bring more communities to our game and our facilities. And want to chat with you, Adam, a little bit about facility usage, right? How we use those spaces that already exist to help to make more change around us. I'm curious if you could share a little bit more about what inspired the collaboration between the First Tee and the Boys and Girls Club at your chapter, and just take us through that process and how it's been going so far.
Yeah, you know, 6 years ago when I started with First Tee is when we we had a very grassroots idea with absolutely no thought behind what we were doing or anything. It was just literally just a grassroots idea at the time, right? And we're a very small organization. I was the only employee at the time. We knew we had a strong relationship with Inverness Club, so we knew that we could probably acquire the property next door to them and build something. So at the time we were thinking, you know, it'd be great to build a little 2,000-3,000 square foot building for our offices, maybe a driving range, maybe a couple golf holes, et cetera. Shortly after that, we had talked to some community business leaders to get their feedback. Some of the feedback included it'd be great to have some sort of partner in the project, not only from a programming standpoint, but also, I guess, to help with sustainability. And so shortly after that, we actually, at the time, I had just been asked to join the board of directors for the local Boys and Girls Club chapter. And one of the first board meetings, they had mentioned looking to expand their programming. They had been looking for almost a decade at expanding their programming into this specific Toledo Public School district. It was the only district in the whole city that they didn't have a programming presence in. So our board president and I walked into their leadership's office later that week, and it was just hey, we're thinking about maybe doing something on this property. Heard what you said in the meeting the other day. Anything we could do together? And you know, there was literally 3 years of kind of talks and figuring out what it was. And you know, I won't save all the boring details of that, but you know, collaboration's hard, and it takes a while to get organizations on the same page and get people on the same page for a singular mission. And it took a few years to get there, but essentially at the end of the day, what we came up with was a lot of the original vision mixed with adding, blowing the boys or the building up to accommodate Boys and Girls Club programming. And I think what we've done here, and granted, we've only been programming for a month, but some of the positives I will say is that first week we opened, we had 20 or 25 kids showing up each day after school, and we're already up to 100 each day. And we can only accommodate about 115, 120 at a time, especially in the cold months. So it's working. And some of the things that, I know David mentioned in terms of, Ashleigh, I believe you mentioned it as well. How do you expose kids to golf that don't have any reason to go out, right? So I think what we did here was affordability, accessibility, right? So now there is these great golf facilities. We have an athletic field as well, but right in the heart of the city, there's no other golf opportunities around. There's been countless neighbors in that area that have just, come up and thanked everyone there, saying, we were looking for something like this in the area. It's been great. But not making it just golf. So I think that's one of the things that we did really well on the front end of planning this, is how can we engage all kids here, no matter what their interests are. So, gymnasium. So we have basketball, we have homework help, we have soccer, we have arts and crafts room. That's awesome. We serve meals each night after school. We're serving about up to 100 meals a day now. So there's all these reasons for the kids to come. And that's made it much easier than the model we've worked off of in the past in terms of partnering with existing golf courses. And there's a lot of great things with that as well. And we've exposed a lot of kids to golf that way. But I think the kids coming for one reason, then hearing over the PA, hey, first tee golf programming is starting in 30 minutes. More and more kids each day is, oh, I heard that was fun the other day. Let's go try it. So we've put 160 kids in a month through first tee programs after school, brand new kids that we've introduced in that area. So we're optimistic it'll continue to be a success, and there's already some conversations happening about us needing a bigger building soon. I'm telling our board, let's pump the brakes on that real quick. We just got off a $7.5 million capital campaign. We gotta hold off a little bit, but it's been a fun last month since we opened, that's for sure.
And Adam, this facility is obviously very different from any other first tee facility across the country, right? It's larger in scale, but also it sounds like a lot of the internal features as well.
Yeah, I think the collaboration, it's not unique from a sense of just a pure first tee Boys and Girls Club relationship. But the scale of what we did is very unique. And I believe it's really the only one like this in the country. So I think, what was the original question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm really just curious if you could speak to some of the features inside the building that make it a bit different from traditional first tee chapters. Yeah,
there's a lot of chapters that I'm aware of that have maybe partnered with a city course or a Metro Park run facility, and their administrative team works from the clubhouse, or in some cases, I think even maintain the golf course or just have access that way, which I think is a great model depending on the community and the area. What makes this different is we kind of built it from scratch, and we designed it. We didn't move in somewhere and try to make it fit what we wanted for the kids. We were able to really come up with what we thought in our minds was going to be the most inviting, fun, impactful, I guess, scenario for kids in that area, and we were able to build it. So there's a lot of fun meetings on what all could we include here that would really draw the kids in and make it a very, very one of a kind experience. And so I think what we built, Ashleigh, from the indoor programs, other sports, golf being a huge focus of the project, but not only that, we hope all the kids out there will try golf, but knowing I think we can have 60% or so of the kids that we're seeing each year out the site participate in some way in first tee, I think that's a home run for us. and it'll grow too, because I think we're already having conversations. We just had a meeting last week with an organization called Toledo Grows. We're looking at starting a kind of an urban garden with them and some of the property we didn't develop next year. And I think we'll just kind of keep adding on and get feedback from the kids and parents on what other things that they would like to see out there.
Love that. That definitely
All
sounds
about
like
collaboration. So
yes, absolutely. And speaking of collaboration, I want to check in with Danny and Gerry. Obviously, you've kind of taken some of, or there's some similarities with some of what Adam and the First Tee have done in terms of creating really a center, right? Kind of the heart of a community, and expanded that out. Danny, could you share, kind of walk us through a little bit of the history of your work and how golf has served as part of that catalyst for driving community redevelopment?
Absolutely. So golf has absolutely been a driver of, historically been a driver of the community redevelopment that's happened in the Eastlake community over the last 26 years. So the course was built in the early 1900s, and there were two Eastlakes. Everyone said Big Eastlake, and then there was Little Eastlake. And Big Eastlake is what everyone knows as the historic Eastlake golf course that still stands today. At over the course of some decades, second Eastlake, a Little Eastlake, changed ownership and ultimately was sold to the few different corporate owners, for-profit owners, and then ultimately sold to the Atlanta Housing Authority when they used it to construct Eastlake Meadows in 1971. And Eastlake Meadows, from its very earliest years, you can look at the papers back then and you see by like the second year homicides happening and so forth and so forth. So Tom Cousins, who, well, let me take a step back. So there was this amazing thing that came to Atlanta called the Olympics in 1996. And all of Atlanta was really scurrying to try to make Atlanta everything that it could be on the international scene. And so there were two remarkable Atlantans, Egbert Perry, who is the founder and principal and owner of Integral Properties here, a commercial development company, and Reny Lewis Glover, who was the CEO of the Atlanta Housing Authority. And Reny had the opportunity to re-envision what public housing would look like in Atlanta. And instead of raising all of the public housing and rebuilding it as just new housing, but still concentrating poverty, through Reny, Egbert, and a few other local leaders working together, this concept of mixed income housing emerged. And they called it the Olympic Legacy Program because of the timing of the Olympics coming to Atlanta. And there were a few different housing developments in Atlanta that were early pilot projects. And Reny and Egbert really thought about Tom and Eastlake, because Tom had just bought the golf club. And I want to make sure that everyone here understands that Tom took his nonprofit family philanthropy, purchased a for-profit club, and used it as a driver for community change. So the Eastlake Golf Club's motto is golf with a purpose. And that purpose is the continued and sustained redevelopment that's happened here. And it didn't happen without lots of heartache and woes, because you look at the history of Atlanta. Atlanta's a city that is very racially segregated, racially divided. Sadly, Atlanta is the #1 city when you look at cities for racial inequity. Atlanta sits at the top. And so Tom had, a hard time initially engaging and encouraging and having the residents, who are all African-American in the all housing development, to trust him, this wealthy white guy from the other side of town, who, like many other people in the past, came and said, hey, I'm here and I want to do good. And it took 3 years of planning, meeting once a week for several hours, some yelling, some name calling, and working really hard with the first and only ever president of the Tenants Association in Eastlake Meadows, the late Eva Davis, to really gain her trust and to develop that vision with her and her granddaughter. 3 decades later, her granddaughter is the vice chair and soon to be chair of the charter school that we started in the community. So her family's still deeply engaged. And to really bring in public and private partners to do this work. And when I say public partners, partners like the Atlanta public school system, We would not be able to have the city's first ever and most successful charter school if it was not for that public partnership. Bringing in public partners like the Atlanta Housing Authority, so the mixed income housing model would not work in this community if it were not for that partnership. And then really holding hands with corporate and foundational leaders to make the transformative change that happens today. I didn't mention before, so most of you probably know that the Eastlake Golf Club is a private, almost exclusively corporate member course. Part of the transformation that happened 26 years ago was to build a public course, which was the Charlie Yates course. And Gerry mentioned the Yates family earlier. And this community, the residents, again, at the time, all Black, all poor, were emphatic about the need to have a public course to have access. Because this was a community where they hardly ever got a glimpse of the course other than when the gates would swing open and they would peep in because there was mesh that went around the course. And so our Charlie Yates course is the home of the first tee of what had been, until recently, the first tee of Eastlake. I do know that we are one of the first tee chapters in the country. We previously had the Eastlake Junior Golf Academy. And the legend is that folks from the first tee came and saw what was happening with that Junior Golf Academy. And I don't know if that's true, but there's this notion that we helped to give rise to the first tee. And so the first tee of Eastlake 2 years ago was consolidated with the historic first tee of Atlanta. And now they are the first tee of Metro Atlanta, serving even more kids all across the city. Our kids at the charter school, before they get to third, fourth grade, all of them will have taken a golf class. So they take golf as an elective. So we are exposing them early, and that is really a pipeline for first tee. And so when I think about in 2019, the Drew Charter School varsity boys golf team making history by winning the Georgia High School Golf State Championship. And they happen to be an all Black team, coaches and players. That has never happened before in Georgia's history. And we did a little bit of digging, and we think that that's the first time that that's ever happened in the country, to have an all Black team, players and coaches win a high school state championship in golf, be it not for the first tee of Eastlake and now the first tee Metro Atlanta, be it not for Drew Charter School, be it not for the Eastlake Foundation. I am absolutely confident that 90% of our kids would never have picked up a golf club, and they wouldn't have access. And I'll end, Ashleigh, because I know you want to hear from Gerry on this quick story. There's a young man that I've gotten to know. I've been here 11 years, and the beauty of that is you get to see all the young people grow up. So I've been here to watch what had been our second and third graders graduate high school and start college. That's a long time. And I think of a young man by the name of Darius Davis, who I met in 2010 when I started. Darius came into the first tee when he was 10 after losing his dad. He grew up in the neighborhood, really hitched himself to our first tee coaches. Darius graduated high school, went on to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore on a pretty robust scholarship, which he was able to gain because of his handicap and his familiarity with golf, and graduated 2 years ago from their PGM, Professional Golf Management Program. Darius's goal is to be a head pro and then a GM at a club. And institutions like the First Tee, like the Eastlake Foundation, like the Eastlake Golf Club, which has provided him resources, network and connections, access and opportunity through his time in high school, college, and now beyond, are creating more success stories like Darius all across the country. So I'm super excited about that.
That is incredible. I don't know. It would be hard to listen to that and not want to take that concept back to your community. It blows me away. And Gerry, you actually did that. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do at the Bayou District Foundation and how golf is serving as a catalyst to do some of the same in Louisiana.
Sure, and you know, I think the great thing for us is that we had that example of Eastlake when we arrived in November of 2005. We met with then the executive director, Carol Naughton, who's now the CEO of Purpose Built Communities. And Eastlake was the only holistic community in the country. And we didn't really have any sense what we were stepping into, what we were going to see. the other two gentlemen and I that went up, who have remained a part of the foundation since we founded it, all grew up playing golf. We grew up playing golf competitively through college. We knew of Eastlake. We knew of Eastlake particularly in 2005 because the tour championship had been there. We'd all probably played it. I played it before the renovation. So I played it in the old days when it was pretty dangerous, and Danny can acknowledge that with good friends from Atlanta, including Charlie. But you know, through visiting with Tom Cousins and Chuck Knapp, who came to New Orleans after we'd visited and said, you know, we think we could do this, but we had absolutely no idea what we were getting ourselves into. We, you know, when we started, we thought we were going to be done in 5 years, and it's 15 years later, I'm almost done. Not that the work ever ends, but you know, it's a process. In fact, when Tom and Chuck came to New Orleans, I remember vividly sitting at lunch and Tom banging his hand on the table saying, "This is a slam dunk." And I'm like, yeah, well, if you gave us $25 million to start, I know we could do this a lot quicker than it's going to take. But that didn't happen. But when we came back, we had no stake in anything. You know, I was a banker turned real estate developer. One of my partners, friends, owns a bank. The other one owns a restaurant company. And I think I left the room and everybody said, Gerry's going to do this. He's going to lead this work. And 15 years later, it's still my volunteer job with our 2 employees. But so we set out to really engage and figure out who we needed in the room, you know, who we needed to have as partners. We went to the Housing Authority and brought the concept of building a mixed income community. The Housing Authority of New Orleans was in receivership for 11 years, including the time we started, and we went through 8 executive directors since. So you can imagine, you know, bringing a new idea to somebody that's serving a short-term role is not going to get a lot of traction very quickly. It took us about a year and a half, or a little over a year, to get them to agree to issue an RFP that we could respond to ultimately be selected as the development partner to redevelop the public housing. It was a former public housing that had up to 1,300 public housing units, originally built as for returning veterans from World War II. So it had turned much like Eastlake. It was probably the most dangerous neighborhood in the city, and people would not stop at the red light at the corner because you were scared. As I said, City Park was 2 blocks away, so that was really the one that we felt was going to be the most appropriate. And in Katrina, what was substandard housing ended up with 10 feet of water for 4 weeks. So substandard housing became basically uninhabitable. We were fortunate that, unlike Tom, we didn't have to negotiate with our public housing residents because they'd all evacuated. We had to listen, and we ended up having 60 public meetings with our public housing, you know, anybody that was interested on what is this going to look like. And quite honestly, you know, there was a lot of distrust. The Housing Authority hadn't lived up to any of their promises. And you know, and there we are. I'm, you know, a white man in front of a community that was 100% African American saying, we're going to do this. And, you know, you have to trust me. And they're like, we've tried this before and we hadn't trusted anybody because it doesn't work. But anyway, we were able to, through lots of conversations, partner with the Housing Authority and Columbia Residential, which is an Atlanta-based group. We actually, on our first visit after we decided we were going to consider doing this, we met with, in addition to Carol and Tom, we had Renee Glover and Egbert Perry. We went and saw Centennial Homes, Eastlake, and we had the pleasure of spending about an hour with Eva Davis and having her tell all the bad stories about, you know, Tom Cousins was so bad and then he became my friend. And it was, you know, it was really compelling. And again, we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, but we're able ultimately to bring in partners with the school district, city park, and be able to, 10 years later, we opened in 2010, the new community, and we opened 466 units, 1/3 public housing, 1/3 low income, and 1/3 market rate. We opened 100% leased day one, and we've been 100% leased for the last 11 years. And then golf, we ultimately were able to convince the park, but as you all are talking about, it all takes time. We began those conversations in 2006-07 with the park, and we finally signed a cooperative endeavor agreement with them in 2014. And that was because we were the only one that was willing to raise money to assist in building back golf in the park. And so the park project, the new golf course and clubhouse and maintenance facilities, all of which have been flooded, is about a $25 million project, of which Bayou District was responsible for raising $9 million. And that's what ultimately created the partnership that allows us to share in revenues with the park and bring money back into the community. So I always like to have the conversation when I can look back and not be looking forward and saying, God, we're going to hopefully finish this thing someday. So, but there's a lot that's happened great over the last 10 years, and we're starting to see great impact studies on longitudinal success. So glad to be where we are, and glad to have golf as an active part of our work.
Gerry, of some of the impacts that you've heard or seen from the work that you've done so far, what's been the most surprising? What has caught you by surprise to hear that or to learn that the work that's put in has done within your community?
Well, I think you always have, hopes, but you don't necessarily think you're going to actually realize some of those hopes. Seeing what happened at Eastlake and the crime reduction, that was a huge target of ours. In the 4 years prior to Katrina, so 2001-05, in the 18 city blocks that was the St. Bernard Public Housing Complex, there were 684 felonies and 43 murders. So that's 11 murders a year. In the last 11 years since we've been in place, there have been 3 attempted felonies. No murders, 3 attempted felonies, so we've actually just recently had an impact study which tried to analyze both the economic and social benefit. And I came across a study that RAND did that said the cost of a single murder to a community is $8 million. So if you multiply 11 murders a year times 11 years, that's a lot of money, and we've had none. So, it's hard to quantify, but I think, crime has certainly been unbelievable. I think the fact that we've been 100% occupied since we opened, nobody predicted that. But it is because we were really looking to how do we meet the needs of this community. And as I said in the really beginning of our work, I said, what we need to do is build luxury apartments for residents of all incomes. And so our public housing residents are living in next door. We have buildings that are, say, six unit townhouse buildings, and they're 2 public housing, 2 market rate, 2 low income, and they all get the same product, but they all pay what is reasonable for them. And the amenities within the community, we have pools, we have playgrounds, we have a whole green block that's a community garden and play field. We have a movie theater, 46-seat movie theater in our main community, and a 24-seat theater in our senior housing community. And so that's, there's pride in place. The people don't leave. Average resident is there for at least at this point, it's over 5 years. So in a rental community, that's pretty amazing. And then I think the engagement, being able to see, we partner with pretty much all of the work that you all do. We have a First Tee partnership. We have a PGA Hope program for veterans. We have a community that was built 3 blocks away from our community, Bastion, which is a veteran community. You know, we have lots of different ways we try to engage, and we've talked about how do we engage the Latino community. So we've got a lot of things that we can keep working on. But I think, you know, those things, and I think probably the one that was the most surprising is there was a study that Robert Wood Johnson did in 2016, which talked about life expectancy in various parts of the country, and New Orleans was included in that. And the thing that jumped out to us when we saw that was that there's a public housing community here where the average age, average life expectancy was 55 years old in that community, very similar to our community. But you go 3 miles away to a more affluent community, and the average life expectancy was 81 years. So there was a 26-year difference between the two. We now have in our community, our life expectancy is over 70 years old from what was 55, which has basically happened over the last 15 years because of the work that we've done. So, and I think the traction and success of golf and how it's been able to be really integrated into the work. We've actually got first tee programming going into our early childhood school and our K-8 school. And first tee in New Orleans has, I think they go into about 70 schools and do their first tee snap programming. So, you know, it's a great way to engage. Our demographic is, we are still probably over 90% African American. Our school populations are similar. Our neighborhood is similar. So, you know, we are in it, and I think Danny would say the same thing. I mean, the work that we do, I see, you know, our goal is to create racial equity and inclusion. And I think it's the work we've been doing for 15 years. Some people are finally realizing it now that they've had to open their eyes. But it's, you know, it's also very rewarding to be where we are. So glad to be here.
Absolutely. And Danny, I saw your hand raised there. I want to toss to you in case you wanted to add something to that.
I just want to actually amplify a few things that Gerry said. So when you think about the fact that in Eastlake and in Bayou District Foundation's work, and I'm willing to bet this would be true for the 26 other organizations that are part of the purpose-built network, like Gerry and I, you would think that it's counterintuitive in some ways that people in our mixed income housing inventory are staying longer. So when you look at market rate housing, the average tenancy is about a year. And in Eastlake, it for us is a little bit more than 2.5 years. And then when you look at our public housing or tax credit housing, it's also longer. So on average in Atlanta, it's typically 2 years. And here it's almost 5 or 6. And what we've done is we've done a few things. We've created mixed income neighborhoods where people of all walks of life can create community, where people who've been intergenerationally poor can live a life that is filled with grace and stripped from stigma. And they can live side by side. And this whole notion of racial equity, and I'm so glad as a country that we're finally getting a better understanding of why equity is important and why equality doesn't work. You can't treat all people the same because we didn't start at the same starting line, right? And when Gerry talked about, Tom talking about this work being long-term work, and you know, Gerry being vulnerable and honest to say he thought that this was 5 years and done. Well, sure, this is shorter term work when you're talking about the built environment, to go in and build some things. But when you're talking about transforming people's lives, and you're talking about 400 years of institutional racism in this country, that doesn't get undone overnight. People don't find themselves getting there overnight. And when you think about the multi-generational work that Gerry and I are doing for whole families, right? It's disruptive to this notion that, oh, most organizations want to help kids, and that's where they stop. And they blame the adults in those families for the circumstances of poverty that they find themselves in, instead of recognizing what systemic racism, excuse me, not institutional racism, what systemic racism has done and how it's played out. You realize that you have to play the long game. And people of color and or poor people in this country, they don't need more because we are deficient. We need more in different sorts of things because of the history of this country. So I'm glad that Gerry framed our work because we do say that we do community redevelopment work as health work because we are working on the health of communities. We are addressing employment, we're addressing academic achievement, we're addressing safety, we're addressing health and wellness, and everything that kind of rolls up into it. And we're doing it through this racial equity framework because that's the only way that you create community. And as everybody else was talking about, the one word that's come up consistently from me, from Gerry, from Adam, from David, from Azucena is this notion of community and this notion of life. For me, listening to everybody today, it's not really about golf as sport. It's about golf as life and building community and the way that golf can be a lever for transformative community change, the way that golf could be a tool for equity, particularly racial equity, gender equity, the way that golf could be transference or conveyor of values, which is why I love the first tee, right? Because it's as much about the life skills as it is about the golf skills. And last, the thing that we didn't touch on that I just want to make sure that I mentioned, with everything that we saw in 2020 and 2021, what I call the trifecta of a pandemic, that being COVID-19 and the impact that it had on all communities, but particularly communities of color in the United States. When you look at the civil unrest, that was the result of people being sick and tired of being sick and tired of being targeted and being victims of violence, largely perpetuated on them by authorities in this country. And then also when I look at all the political instability, and this is not about partisanship, it's about human decency and preserving our democracy and the ideals. I'm proud to say that the East Lake Golf Club and our partners in the East Lake Foundation were very thoughtful about all the ways we stepped up in community and led during COVID-19. So we worked with our two other purpose-built community network members in Atlanta, one on the west side, one on the historic south side, neither of them connected to golf, to make sure that we could give families digital devices as kids were learning from home and people were having to work from home, to make sure that we could help to mitigate the mental health crisis that often doesn't get talked about in communities of color, and what all the pandemics of last year did. And at the source of all the things that we did was really this notion of realizing that people have core human essential needs. Things like access to food, which became a problem during COVID-19. Things like access to toiletries. Things like access to masks to protect yourself. We use the club as a community hub. And we had our chef partner with a local food association here connected to restaurants who were having to dump their food because they were closed because of the pandemic, and actually set up two stations in East Lake, one being the club, for volunteers to assemble food boxes. We donated some thousands upon thousands of pounds of food and toiletries at the golf club. And to see families with tears in their eyes, some of them who had never been inside the gates and were coming inside the gates to get relief at this trying time was huge. And then last but not least, I'll end on this. We were able to engage an African-American female cardiologist to create some awareness around COVID-19 and talk about the importance of people of color, particularly Black people, participating in clinical trials as the vaccine was being developed. And then worked with a large healthcare system here, Piedmont Healthcare, to offer clinics, vaccination clinics, for our essential workers, for teachers, for older residents in this community, so people were actually able to get vaccinated on site with ease and with a level of comfort at a time when most people were not willing to try the vaccine. So I just wanted to offer that lens. Like I said, golf as a lever for community change, as a lever for equity, as a lever for values conveyance, and also as relief, which I don't know that we necessarily think about golf and golf courses as tools for those things.
Can I jump in a little bit? First of all, Gerry and Danny, your work sounds amazing, really inspiring and super amazing. And I personally would love to know more. I think there's an interesting lens as you talk about racial inequality and hundreds of years of that in the U.S. That if you look at people with intellectual disabilities. It is a discrimination that knows no bounds. It crosses every economic standards. It crosses all racial standards. It crosses all gender. It's everywhere in the world. And if you look at people with physical disabilities, especially people that are wounded at war, it's the same thing. So those end up, if you think about the communities that you service, those people have, the trifecta, as you refer to it. They might have, 2 of those or 3 of those that are impacting their families and their personal lives. And one of the interesting things about, the game of golf, and we talked about it being community and the fact that it is kind of a level playing field when you get on the game, it becomes eye-opening. And I've seen inner city golfers, coming in through the first tee, and they meet a Special Olympics athlete and they see that their differences are actually more striking, and they look at them very different on day 1 and hole 1 than they do the day later or 2 days later. And they look at a wounded veteran, and a day after they've been with them, they'll actually ask them about that leg, and you'll see a veteran actually take the leg off and show it and talk to that young person and explain how it works, and turns it into a moment of equality. And I've actually experienced and have communication with people that have come out of those programs now as college students and professionals, where that moment changed their lives. They got to realize that as difficult as their life has been, and as they face so much inequality in their lives, they can see that there are people that have bigger challenges that they do, that just gives them that extra boost of inspiration to go and make a difference in their lives. So yeah, whether it's a young Latino golfer that I know from California, or a young African-American golfer that went from LA to DC to Charlottesville, like I've seen all these people kind of emerge in life of people that were inspired by looking at somebody that's got a little bit harder than they do, to go like, I can make a difference. I can be different. I can actually be part of change. And I think that's a big part of the game. And certainly what you all have done is super inspirational, and look out for a phone call from me, probably.
Beautifully said, David. I think, so many great takeaways from our conversation today. I think, for me, from listening to the group, such a great reminder that as an industry, as golf course operators, we really have to think more about the long game, right? And think about not just, where we net out at the end of our golf season or the fiscal year, but really, what is our responsibility to the communities that we serve? As you said it beautifully, we're parks, we are community centers. We are here to serve as a catalyst for connecting people and for invigorating the lives of people who surround us. Of course, getting more people to play, but there's so much more that this game has to offer, David, as you alluded to. So, and from Danny and Gerry, right? Golf can fund community programs, but also community programs can help fund golf, right? We can grow our facilities, our customer base. We can help create more of those life events, those life experiences, and those longer lasting outcomes for people. It's really cyclical, and there's so many holistic ways that we can really create deeper impacts in our communities. I'm gonna end with one final question for you all, and that is, what is something that our audience can do starting today, right, to start thinking about for themselves operationally in terms of how they can make a deeper impact in their community. And Azucena, I'll go ahead and start with you, and we'll point out the rest of the group afterwards.
Well, I think immediately, if they don't have a community advisory group, a golf advisory committee within their municipal system or golf courses, they need to form one right away. And that is, it could consist of your clubs, your golf clubs already that play at your courses, plus your community groups, because we didn't necessarily touch on it here, but communities are what are going to save golf courses when they are challenged, when they're in trouble. So you have to start building that bond, that community with the community. And then all of that, when you need help, when we need support, it's already built in. So that would say, if I can give you one piece of advice, would be you get that group together and start connecting with your community.
David, I'll toss it to you next.
I really think it is, look for opportunities to, bring people of difference together that allow them to look at your facility as a place where something changed their life. And that's always going to bring people back. So as you're looking at it as, creating these opportunities to do something different with people and really make it not just about the game but about something that's life-changing to them, and just brainstorming around that, thinking that through, and just thinking about, people always remember the places that they were where something magical happened in their life. And if you just think about it from that perspective, I think you can think about ways to make a difference.
Thank you, David. Adam, I know there's a lot of magic happening at your chapter of the First Tee. What's one bit of advice that you'd leave for the group?
I think, and again, we didn't build a public golf course necessarily. It's more geared towards First Tee and youth, but I think our pretty rapid growth with participants we've seen can be traced back to building excitement outside of just our four walls, if you will. So we spend a lot of time going and doing presentations at schools, at parent-teacher conferences, PTA conferences and meetings, the local churches. Our program director, he does 1 or 2 presentations a week and anywhere within 3-4 miles of our site, just to build the awareness and momentum. I think that in general would be a great kind of idea for some facilities looking to kind of grow maybe the diversity within their facilities that they're seeing, or just spread the word about different things going on, and then making it a fun and engaging and maybe above and beyond just golf when people get on site. So maybe thinking a little bit more about how can we make things different than what it's always been, and thinking that down the road, not just as you said, what's your bottom line look like at the end of the month.
Absolutely. Gerry, how about you? What's one takeaway you'd leave our group with, something they can do right away to make a deeper impact?
I think it's recognizing that you can't think too big, and there aren't any bad ideas. I mean, we'd never be where we are if we hadn't been willing to think bigger than we thought was possible. We have a $310 million investment that we've created over the last 15 years, which started from zero. And that's because we were smart enough, I think, at the end of the day, to figure out we had to find the right strategic partners in all the disciplines that we were doing. And I think that's one of the things people, you need to be willing to listen to people that you may not think should be your partner, or don't bring anything directly to what it is you're doing. But I mean, we found partnerships in things that are additive to our community, that weren't integral or requisite, but they give opportunities to our families and our community. And that's their partnerships. I mean, we're partnered with a group that is training people to be bartenders, because because the business of New Orleans, when it comes back, is the hospitality business. And I think that, the real other takeaway is, we can't grow the game of golf if the population that plays golf is the same. So we've got to be able to utilize the tools of the First Tee, of the Latina golf group, because in New Orleans, we're a majority population. African Americans represent about 50%. Latina is about 10, but growing. And so, if we're not appealing to those groups, golf is got no future, and golf is a critical piece to our puzzle in order to sustain our model. So, we are trying to find those ways. We're doing a good job with First Tee. I think we'll have some conversations about the Latina community, because I've got some good friends there, but they can't figure out how to attract their friends and their community. So, and I think as Danny would say and know, it takes patience and it takes perseverance, and you just got to be willing to start and go till it's finished, even if it's 15 years later.
Absolutely. Danny, why don't you round us out here?
Perfect. So my advice is simple. Invest in deep, thoughtful, intentional, creative, and consistent community engagement. And if you do it well, it means that you will listen considerably more than you talk. The old adage of build it and they will come never works. I think it has to be more of a matter of build with people and they will stay. And as we've talked about the golf and the ability to really have it be a lifelong tool, lifelong skill, I think it's important that we all realize as you create community that you have to bring people there to the space and then create opportunities for them to stay. And I think once we do that, then we will look at we will see or experience a deeper diversity, more inclusive field of people who enjoy the game, and not just on the course, but also behind the scenes. There's no reason in this day and age that we should not have more people of color in spaces like agronomy and in all aspects of golf, and not just on the service side, but also on the leadership side. And that's what's lacking right now in the game of golf.
I don't know if I could say it any better myself, Danny. That was wonderful. Wow. I mean, I don't know about those in the room who are listening, but inspired is the word that comes to mind when I think about all of the work that you all do and the direction that you're taking our industry in. I'm even more hopeful about the future of our game, the future of our sport. I hope that those who have had an opportunity to listen today have had a few seeds planted and are excited to take some new direction or some ideas that'll help amplify the work that we collectively want to do within our communities. So thank you so much on behalf of the organizers of this event and myself and Youth on Course for taking the time and sharing your expertise with us today. I know we have a few folks who are going to stay on to answer some questions in the chat. Gerry has also graciously offered to share some materials from the Bayou District Foundation as well that might be helpful to you all. But thank you so much, and looking forward to following along with the great work that you guys continue to do over the years to come.